In this video, we're going to talk about converting measurement units. So an example of that is convert 2.5 gallons to fluid ounces. So there's more than one way to convert measurement units. I'm going to show you the one that I use, and I like it because it keeps me from making silly mistakes, which is something I tend to do. Uh, when you're converting measurement units, the most common mistake is that you multiply things when you should divide, or you divide when you should multiply. So this method keeps you from making that mistake. So the method we're going to use is called dimensional analysis. Your book calls it the bridge method. The method is based on conversion charts. So I've provided you with one. Um, this part of the conversion chart is about volume equivalence. So what this means is that the chart gives you equivalent measurements. So if we look here, you already know that 1 quart is equal to 2 pints. So as you read across the chart, you'll be reading equivalent measurements. So I go across the chart, all these measurements are equivalent to each other. So you could take any one of these. 1 quart is equal to 0.9464 liters. 1 quart is also equal to 64 tablespoons. So all of those measurements are equivalent to each other. So then there's a weight equivalence part of your chart too. Works the same way. 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces, which is equal to 453.6 grams. So one thing to notice when you're doing standard unit equivalents, it's confusing in the culinary field because we use ounces and fluid ounces, and those are completely different. So ounces are a measure of weight, and fluid ounces are a measure of volume. For water, the two are the same, but for other substances, those two are different. So be really careful when you're doing these to distinguish between ounces and fluid ounces. So the first thing we're going to do, we're working on our problem, convert 2.5 gallons to fluid ounces. First thing we're going to do is rewrite fractions or any mixed units into decimals. So we write our 2.5 gallons as 2.5 gallons. Then we're going to write that quantity as a fraction with a bottom number of 1. So all I'm doing is putting 1 under the 2.5 gallons. Then I'm going to write a second fraction over here. I'm going to leave it blank for the moment, but the thing I'm going to do is put the unit from the top of this fraction, so gallons, down on the bottom of the next fraction. So this is a really fundamental idea in this way of doing conversions. So then I need to fill in this fraction. So remember, I'm going from gallons to fluid ounces. So I look on my volume equivalence chart. 1 gallon is 128 fluid ounces. So I go back in here and I fill that in the second fraction. 1 gallon on the bottom, 128 fluid ounces on the top. So the reason we wanted the gallons on the bottom when they were on the top on this left fraction is so that we can cancel them. So if you're used to doing fractions, you'll recognize that. But if you're not used to doing fractions, don't worry about it. Just think about that's how we're going to do this. We're going to cancel units by any time one is up on top. If I want to get rid of gallons, I put gallons on the bottom on the second fraction. So this is the way I set up the problem. Next thing I do is go through and multiply straight across the top and across the bottom. So on the top here I have 2.5 times 128, and then I still have fluid ounces. Remember, the gallons have canceled, so they aren't there anymore, but the fluid ounces are still there. So I multiply the numbers, 2.5 times 128, and then on the bottom 1 times 1. And then I just do the multiplication. So I did this on a calculator. I did 2.5 times 128. I did 1 times 1, which is 1, and then I divide those two, and I got 320 fluid ounces. So the answer to our question of converting 2.5 gallons to fluid ounces, 2.5 gallons is 320 fluid ounces. Okay, so try pausing the video and trying this problem using the dimensional analysis method that we just talked about. So this one asks, how many tablespoons are there in 3.5 quarts? So our first step is make it into a decimal. 3.5 is 3.5. Then I make it into a fraction with a 1 underneath. Then I set up my second fraction. I remember setting it up so that because I want to get rid of quarts, I'm changing quarts into tablespoons. Since the quarts is on top over here, I want it on the bottom over here. Then I go to my reference chart. I'm looking for the change between quarts and tablespoons. So here's quarts and here's tablespoons. So then I go back and fill in my fraction. 64 tablespoons is equal to 1 quart. My quarts canceled out. That's why I set it up that way. Then I multiply straight across the top. So the quarts are gone. 3.5 times 64. Tablespoons transfers over because that didn't get canceled out. So on the top I have 3.5 times 64. On the bottom 1 times 1. When I do all that math, I end up with 224 tablespoons for 3.5 quarts.